Okay, good morning, everyone who's already on the call. We'll give participants. Good morning. We'll give participants a few more seconds to join before we're getting started. So more people in the waiting room. Yeah, so we have around about 100 participants now. We're expecting more, of course, so I'm still waiting a little bit. Yes, the recording will be made available after this meeting in the next few days. This is a question from the chat. So I would say it's 10:02. Let's get started. To not lose time here, we have a packed agenda for today. And so yes, welcome to our webinar, the value of the EU battery passport and how to capture its benefits. My name is Andreas Schneider. I'm currently leading the Battery Pass project. And if you have been with us for some time, you know that we've had webinars before. We had a series of, I think, 6 webinars at the time where we were presenting the results of the previous publications. Today will be very lean, so it's just this one here, a 90-minute one, so it's packed with information, and you'll be good to go if you join this session now. Before we're getting started, and I see still more people coming in, so I'm just slowing a little bit down. We'd like to understand who's participating today and to understand to which audience we are speaking today. So that's why we're doing a poll right now, which should be popping up now soon. And the question is, for which type of organization are you working? Is it research and academia? Is it government? Is it business service providers, industry, or a standard development organization, membership or consortia, or is it a consultancy or other? And we ask you to answer this question now. Give you a few seconds and then we'll have a look at the results in a few seconds as well. Okay, there seems to be a clear focus on industry, which is great. To have round about almost 50% participants from industry, still changing a little bit. And after that, we have like research and academia. No, business service providers have 10%. Yeah, but so pretty much half of the audience seems to be from industry, and then it's academia. And I think this is also very well reflected in today's panel because we have science and academia there, but we also have industry. And so we're looking forward to an exciting discussion. So I think the picture is not changing that much anymore, so we could end the poll. Okay, great. So thanks for participating here, and then let's move on with the webinar. So I'm happy to present today's speakers. We have 2 more colleagues from Systemic here today, which is Dr. Niklas Niemann and Juan Marulanda. We'll have the panel discussion with Dr. Lisa Riesch from Arcatech, with Peter Wilms from Umicore, and then Abdelrahman Abdallah, he's a researcher from Politecnico di Milano. And we're also very happy to welcome the policy-making side. Tim Schulze, Dr. Tim Schulze is joining us from BMWK, and we'll have a few words in the next minute. Before we really get started, we have a few housekeeping rules that I'm going to share. perhaps even start with the agenda, just so you know what's coming up today. So after this welcome, we will have Tim Schulze, as just mentioned. Then I will guide you through the key results of the battery pairs value assessment before we're coming to the highlight of today's webinar, which will be the panel discussion with the speakers that I've just presented. And then even before 11, presumably we're going to move on to the Q&A session, where we're also waiting for your input. So you will be able to submit questions through Slido, and then you will also be able to upvote. So we will be able to pass on these questions to the panel. Some housekeeping rules here. Obviously, this is a recorded session, and the recording will be shared after this session. So generally, you will be muted. Only speakers and panelists will be able to speak. You can then submit your questions later on through, or already now, through Slido by pretty much scanning the QR code, or later on also just using the pop-up here in the Zoom call. We will also moderate these questions to that extent that to avoid duplicate questions, to not make it more confusing. And you can then upvote the questions, and then we will pass it and directly pass it to the panel, the ones that are top voted pretty much. One more word is the battery pairs works in a pre-competitive field. So some topics we might not be able to discuss here openly. I think we're ready to get started. And I am very happy to welcome Tim Schulze. He is from the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, BMWK. And BMWK is also funding the battery pairs project. And the battery pairs team has just recently handed over the key results on BMWK stage at Hannover Messe in April. And so we're now happy to also have a short address from Tim Schulze. So Dr. Tim Schulze, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Andreas Schneider, and good morning to you all. So first of all, I must say that I'm thrilled by the resonance to this webinar with close to 200 people that have already joined. So this is, I think, a very good sign. And I'm representing the proud sponsor, you could say, of this project, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. My name is Tim Schulze. I'm from the Unit for Electric Mobility, Alternative Drivetrains and Environmental Innovation, which I think is a good tagline also for the battery pass. And this is where the battery activities of our ministry reside. So I don't want to make too many words here, but you probably know that Germany has been supporting the idea of a European battery value chain since early on, 2017, 2018, when all this kicked off, first with the IPCEIs and then further measures in the European arena that followed. And we early on, and I think together with the Commission and other member states, have recognized the importance of sustainability. When we would like to advance the European battery value chain and to also create transparency on sustainability, I think it's a no-brainer to have instruments, regulatory instruments that support this goal. And one of those is, of course, the battery passport embedded in the battery regulation that has been passed last year and now moves into execution. And this is why we kicked off the Battery Pass project as a national research and innovation project, but with a truly European spirit, and also with a spirit and a clear angle towards implementation of the battery passport. The goal was not less than to deliver, you could say, a pilot implementation, also looking at the barriers and the value of having this regulatory instrument. And we are very happy. This I can say with the results so far, both in the content and also in the outreach. I think the consortium has done a very good job in addressing the stakeholders and making known the idea of the battery passport, also the content of the project in the European arena. And at this stage, I would like to pass thanks to the consortium for that. And now, as you all know, the execution of the battery regulation comes more and more into focus. As you know, the regulation itself has been passed last year. now the work is focused on the different delegated acts, and there is a high number of those under the battery regulation, which then now more and more materialize, kicking off discussion on the details of the implementation. And well, this is of course, as always, where the devil lies in the details, where it's decided whether this is considered more of a burden or an asset to have that in Europe. And this is why this is so important. We are engaged in discussions on political levels, of course, on the content of delegated acts. And I would guess, and this is also what we hear from industry, that you all wonder what is coming towards you with the battery regulation. And I think this also reflects in the interest by industry that we just saw in the poll. So this is why it's very important to have these fora like we are having today to discuss about what is coming and how exactly will it work, which value will it bring about. And this is why we are also very happy with the input by the project into exactly this debate, and specifically regarding the value brought about by the battery passport. And we have seen the study, of course. We have discussed this, as you just heard by Andreas Schneider, on stage at the BMWK stage at the Hanover Fair in April. And we will continue, and you will continue this discussion today. And I'm looking forward very much to a lively discussion. With this, I would like to thank you again for joining, thank the organizers for making this happen, and hand back to Andreas. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Tim Schulze from BMWK. And so with this, I think we can move on to the presentation of the key results of the battery pass value assessment. So with the value assessment, obviously, is a thorough analysis of the benefits of battery passports. Originally, my dear colleague Achim Teuber was about to present the results. Unfortunately, he is sick this week, so now it's my pleasure to guide you through the key results. We are just right now at the 200 participant threshold, so also like a welcome to the late arrivals. Yeah, let's get started here with the results now. So as you might already know, the EU battery regulation mandating, as we've also just heard, mandating digital battery passports for all batteries sold in the European market will be in place from 2027. And the scope here is threefold. So we're talking about batteries for electric vehicles. We're talking about batteries for light means of transportation. This is, for example, the kick scooters, and also industrial batteries with a capacity of more than 2 kilowatt hours. So in this context, 2 years ago, we founded the Battery Pass Consortium with 10 partners, 10 leading partners from technology, industry, and science. 2 of them are joining today the panel as well. So Umicore and Architect, so welcome here then later on stage. And obviously what we have done so far is we have published several pieces of content. So we have published the content guidance, which gives an overview of the content reporting requirements of battery passports. We have published the technical guidance, which gives an overview of the technical standards of battery passports. We have developed a software demonstrator, which is pretty much a software prototype of a battery pass with real-world data. And then finally, today's focus, the value assessment, which analyzes the benefits along the value chain of battery passports. So what is the purpose of battery passports? So here also 3 aspects. First, of course, it pushes the shift from linear to circular economy. So trying to keep products within the system for sustainability reasons and to save resources. Secondly, provide transparencies to make in decision making. So for example, making informed purchasing decisions when it comes to purchasing batteries, of course. And then finally, creating a level playing field so that all stakeholders pretty much have the same access to the market, have the same requirements and the same responsibilities in this market. So this is also an important aspect here. We think that companies can get a lot of benefits and a lot of generate value out of battery passports. We think they can make their operations more efficient by, for example, optimizing their value chain, improving their sourcing processes. They also can achieve product differentiation by, for example, being transparent on their environmental and social responsibilities towards consumers. So this is also an image gain for sure. And then also by fostering digital and green markets, for example, by introducing sustainable business models and that are enabled by circularity approaches. Now, in order to analyze these benefits that I've now mentioned a couple of times, we have defined use cases along the battery value chain. And the value chain obviously starts at the very beginning with mining and refining, moving then on towards pre-materials, for example, it can be lithium, coming then to the cells production, the cells and modules production, and later on the pack assembly. Just trying to get this, yeah. And this is also like the pack assembly where obviously the economic operator then comes very much into play. The value chain continues with the user, and then of course towards the end we're talking about reuse, remanufacturing, and then also the collection and recycling of batteries. So the battery path is in the middle here, is mostly relevant from the stage of pack assembly integration, because that is the stage when battery passports need to be issued, when the economic operator comes into play. And now you can see there are those use cases along the value chain that we have defined. So this can be a use case, for example, here on the pack assembly level, is reliable communication of ESG data. For a user, it can be making informed purchasing decisions when purchasing batteries. At the end of the life cycle, we're coming to the recycling. And obviously, a use case can be more efficient recycling processes. And now what we did is these use cases, of course, are associated with certain benefits. And we've analyzed these benefits along the value chain and for each use case. So most of the use cases, we assessed the benefits qualitatively. But for 3 of the use cases, we also did a quantitative analysis. And on the next slide, I'd like to also jump into those findings here, because of course, always interesting to speak about numbers. And what we found is that implementing battery passports provides significant value. Because what we found out is that in terms of recycling, implementing a battery passport can reduce operational recycling costs of up to 20% by providing information about composition, for example, and disassembly. For the testing cost, we found out that a testing cost can be reduced by up to 10% when it comes to the residual value determination. And then finally, for when it comes to end of life. So we found out there's an increased end of life collection of between 5 to 20% of active material demand in passenger vehicles in Europe, which is of course also very significant. You can, of course, all these numbers depend heavily on the assumptions, right? And you can already see we have a broad range of numbers here. And so it's important, of course, to understand what is behind that. If you're interested in finding out more, especially about those use cases presented here and those numbers. On the left-hand side, we also developed, you can see we developed dashboards where you can also play around with the numbers and make certain assumptions. And these are also available on the website. So you can access those and dig deep into those use cases if you like. And of course, this was just a very, very brief overview on what we have assessed in the value assessment. I think the total document is more than 150 pages. There's an executive summary of 16 pages. And if you want to know more about these value assessment resources, you can access them here. And besides the other resources that have already been published previously, for example, the content guidance, the technical guidance, and also the demonstrator. Also a short outlook, we are still working on the value assessment and we're planning to do an update on the value assessment in September, which also accounts and takes into account the implementation efforts. So far, as you can see, we've mostly had a look at the benefits that come along with battery passports, but we also want to understand, so what are the requirements, what are the hurdles, what are the barriers when it comes to implementing these battery passports, and this will be available in September, so stay tuned here. and then also check for the update in September. But now I think let's move on to the highlight of today's webinar, which is the panel discussion. And for this, I'd like to hand over to my colleague from Systemic, Juan Marulanda, to guide us through the questions and also the Slido, where you will be able to also participate actively in this discussion. Juan.
Awesome, Andreas. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan, and I'm happy to moderate this panel and learn from our panelists today. For the upcoming discussion, we have a few questions to kick off the panel, but the audience will be able to submit and upvote the question on Slido as we speak. So hopefully you'll be able to either see the prompt on the screen, or you could access Slido for the Q&A through this QR code, or going to slido.com and use the code that we have here. But before we start, I want to introduce our panelists. So today we have Dr. Lisa Risch. Dr. Lisa Risch is the scientific officer for the Battery Pass project at Acatech, the National Academy for Science and Engineering. Previously, she was responsible for digitalization and sustainability topics, particularly the Digital Product Passport at DNI, Germany's standardization body that we have. Lisa holds a PhD in physics. Welcome, Lisa, to the panel. And now we want to welcome Peter Wilms. Peter is the lead at Umicore Battery Materials Product Traceability and Battery Pass Program. He started his career in consulting and helping chemicals and oil and gas clients with their product stewardship and regulatory compliance challenges. For the past 7 years, he has worked in the industry on regulatory and government affairs topics and broader sustainability strategy and transformation. Peter holds a master's in industrial engineering from the University of Leuven. Welcome, Peter, to the panel. And last, we have Abdelrahman Abdallah, is a PhD researcher in the Manufacturing Technology and Production System Lab at the Politecnico di Milano in Italy, TOPS Technical University. He completed his master's degree in advanced manufacturing from Politecnico and has ever since been part of the and Remanufacturing for Circular Economic Research Group. Welcome, Abdelrahman. Good. So today for our discussion panel, we have, now that we are more familiar with each other, let's start with the discussion, and let's start with Dr. Lisa. Dr. Lisa, so sorry to put you on the spot and to start this panel, but what are the key requirements for implementing a battery passport from your perspective?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's important to understand your role within the battery value chain. So whether you are a producer of a battery, whether you are the operator who actually places the battery on the market, or whether you are, for example, the recycler, someone at the end of the value chain. And yeah, there came already the question actually that I want to address right away. Yeah, who is responsible? Actually, it's the one who places the battery on the market. So it's the operator who places the battery on the market. He is also responsible to provide the data for the battery passport, the complete and accurate data, and also to do so during the lifetime of the battery. And yeah, to be able to do so, I mean, you have to, or you need a certain degree of digitization, of course, and you also have to understand which kind of data is required, which kind of data has to be provided within the battery passport. We did a large research just analyzing what kind of, or which data points have to go into the battery passport. You can find all these data in the content guidance, also in our data attribute long list. So I think it's very important to understand which data, yeah, you need to provide.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Lisa. And Peter, from your perspective, any different key requirements for implementing battery passports?
Yeah, so just to add to what Dr. Lisa was just saying, just starting from the end, so the final product of the passport and its content. if I look at just battery industry itself, what's really key is the proactive alignment on the definitions, because when I talk about a carbon footprint, there's a lot of different ways of calculating it within industry, but also if you start looking across industry, for example, in the EV industry, electric vehicle industry, the definition for calculating a carbon footprint for a battery, does it align with the way you calculate carbon footprint, for example, for the plastics that are used for the dashboards? Okay. So how does that how does it align? So there's quite some standardization and an alignment required. In addition, what's also required is that the battery pass is the battery industry's version of the digital product passport. But we do not just operate in Europe, we operate in a global context. So cars do not just stay in Europe, cars are imported, cars are exported. So there may also be regulations, requirements arising from other geographies. And then what's important is that whatever we come up with in our small European bubble is also capable of dealing with those external requirements or emerging requirements. So that's the passport and the content. Looking at the passport and the content is the result of a large data exchange, data collection exercise, ideally done through a digital platform, a system, track and trace system. And what's really crucial there is the interoperability, because Europe says you need to make a passport, but how it's to be done, that's up to industry to figure out. First thing you see there is a lot of associations jumping on this topic to work it out, which is good. But also a lot of technology providers jumping on the topic to come up with their own version of this platform to support all the requirements. Challenge there at the moment is the interoperability requirement, which is mentioned in regulation, is only there on paper, but the standard for the exchange does not exist yet. So ideally, that should be ready end of next year, which is already quite ambitious. So standardization committee hit the ground running there. But that means in the meantime, while the first requirements of the battery regulation for disclosing information such as carbon footprint, which is well, if everything goes well, is due as of mid of next year. Supply chain due diligence, all of those requirements will have to be met before that standardization has been achieved. So that means that in the meantime, the data collection, the data exchange is already up and running. And if you are an OEM, you're sitting at the end of the chain. It's quite comfortable because you can just tell your suppliers what to do. But if you're a midstream or an upstream partner, well, there's no single platform, no single system that can actually do everything. There's a lot of different platforms out there. So worst case, and we already see it coming, you have multiple platforms in which we'll have to plug in all our data, do the same exercise over and over again. And that's just plugging in the data in the different platforms. But that brings us to the other side. What data do you put in there? So the entire data preparation exercise. So we already mentioned that you need to understand what data needs to be put in there. So the data definition is really crucial. So we need to kind of data that we're talking about is one, material traceability. So what does that mean? Second, carbon footprint. So how do you calculate it? Making sure that when I share a carbon footprint data with my customer and I get carbon footprint data from my supplier, when in the end we aggregate the data, we're adding up apples and apples and not apples and oranges, because then we've just got a fruit bowl. Supply chain due diligence, recycled content, all of these different things. It's really crucial to understand what it is, and how do we demonstrate compliance, how do we demonstrate sustainability performance, and then what is required for it. So if we start thinking, first of all, about material traceability. Yeah, material traceability, you can do it in different ways. So first, most obvious one, if you're working in a kind of physical manufacturing industry and assembly industry, you can think about a simple batch-to-batch physical traceability. That works great. But the further you go upstream, the further you go into continuous process industry, semi-continuous process industry. So how do you combine those different concepts then? So that's why you also have the other end of the spectrum, which is kind of mass balance traceability. And you've got all different kinds of flavors in between, in the end, to support that kind of traceability. So that's it's actually quite a complex puzzle, aside from just calculating a carbon footprint or other stuff. And then, last, the traceability and transparency. So, if you look at the better regulation, or what's the final purpose, is to, like I said, it's to be able to demonstrate sustainability performance of a product, that you're meeting a certain standard that requires data throughout from the entire value chain. In order to do that, to be able to demonstrate it, you need traceability. It requires transparency on the sustainability performance, but the risk that you see there quite often is that the transparency is also used to gain commercial insights in the upstream process. So I think there's probably a bit more work to be done, fine-tuning to be done in the regulation in the future. Because there's quite some room for interpretation there, and what we see obviously is that the more you go downstream, the more they tend towards full transparency. So showing everything that you've got in the closet, not just showing that your closet is nice and tidy, right? So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. It's nice to understand these insights from the industry, such as Umicore, right? And Abdel, Rahman, what is your take on this? Like, we have seen that both Dr. Lisa and Peter have touched on the role of each of the players in the value chain, understanding the data that is needed, alignment required, standardization. What is your take on this from the academia point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would not go to another topic, but exactly follow up on the comments of Dr. Lisa and Peter. So starting from the actors in the value chain, we understand that, of course, the actor placing the product on the market is responsible to aggregate the data from the upstream suppliers in order to fulfill their role as a responsible economic operator and attach a DPP with the product. But that's just placing it in the market. So we have a manufacturer can do that, the importer can do that, and or other actors acting on their behalf. But more obligations are also required to downstream actors. So once it is actually on the market, we expect, let's say, other actors in regards to repair operations, regarding to maintaining the durability of the product throughout its full life cycle, as well as further downstream actors writing into the DPP with any changes to the actual battery. So here also it's interesting to put ourselves in their shoes to see what they will actually need beyond what is just mandated as in the regulation, and go a little bit beyond that to explore other circular economy use cases. Until, of course, we reach high added value actors. So we can think of remanufacturers, we can think of actors that will repurpose these batteries. Of course, these actors also will be required to either update or issue a DPP in order to comply with this battery being, for the case of remanufacturers, it's the same application and as good as new. So that's how we define it. So that's on one side. On the other side, we have the indicators. So as Peter was mentioning, we need the harmonization when it comes to how do we calculate the different impact metrics. We need also to bear in mind something as the durability. So we are talking in already there is the work of the JRC and trying to have a very specific way to calculate the durability for a battery in a car. But we also have to ask questions as what about after this first life, and we are talking about a reman battery, how durable a reman battery should be in order to be called remanufactured. So these are questions that are between legislation and business implications. And I wanted to bring them up now before, of course, we go into more discussions about maybe the standardization landscape and so forth. Maybe I'll just end by saying in the battery regulation, there are specific indications on what a reman battery would look like. So we understand that there's a lower threshold of 90% of the state of health in order to be directed towards the reman flow. But also, more interestingly, in my opinion, there is a restriction on the variability between the individual cells in a reman battery that I think it was 3% or something like that. So that means we have to take a step back and look at the reman industry that is already established in Europe, see the standardized processes that can ensure the quality of the whatever product is being remanufactured in order to reach the demand side. So there is, as you mentioned in the introduction, maybe Andreas mentioned it, that there is expected benefit of an increase of the collection of the end-of-life batteries, but that has to go, of course, hand in hand with the acceptance of it. So acceptance of the from the market for reused, repurposed reman batteries. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Abdelrahman, for this. And I wanna start again the round of the panel with you, Abdel. And so to follow up on your response, what action must be taken to bring the battery passport to life? Like, what do you think is the key recipe there?
Yeah, so absolutely the crucial part now is having actors in the value chain being aware of their responsibility and their upcoming responsibility within the battery regulation. So that's, again, reiterating the point that Lisa mentioned at the beginning, but it's absolutely crucial. So it's beyond just having a battery manufacturer starting to compile the necessary let's say mandatory data and exposing them, because that's the kind of system that we are discussing. We're discussing exposing certain data points in accordance to the delegated act. But beyond that, we need to also start exploring the concepts of a data economy. So starting if we have an infrastructure of collecting and exposing data for a selected batteries that will come into play in 2027, then we also have the different actors in the value chain should think about starting to share this data beyond the mandatory requirements and beyond the, let's say, the restrictions on the timeline. Because if I give an example of I am now starting or thinking about to start a business about remanufactured batteries, now, I cannot wait until from 2027, maybe 8-10 years, until the first batch of the batteries that are regulated with a passport that come back to me as an end of life. So I think there is an extra step that can be taken by the different actors in order to share these informations that will be easy to expose once the system is agreed upon, and of course the horizontal let's say certifications and standardization effort is put in place. So that's maybe voluntary from the manufacturer's point of view, but a business case can be made that okay, it can be a win-win situation where you actually can get paid for this kind of in retrospect information that you can provide.
Okay, thank you, Abderrahman. And Peter, from the industry point of view, what do you have any additional actions on the list to bring the battery passport to life?
Yeah, so I just spent quite a lot of time explaining a bit about the data, the definitions, and let's say some of the challenges in preparing that data. That's actually quite a lot of effort. At Umicore, we're actually quite lucky that we've got specialized teams working on this, and we've been doing this a lot longer than the actual requirements popped up. But for companies who haven't been doing it, it's a first hurdle that you need to get over. Looking at the battery regulation requirements itself, it's all very reactive. So you sell a product, you track your part of the value chain, you provide the data. The cases that were just being discussed about are more like simulations, so creating a data market for sharing information so you can start playing around with it. I think are very interesting cases, but we're far from there yet. So I think the first thing is making sure that you're able to get the foundation in place first, making sure that you're able to get the data so that we can then start thinking about how to further share and use that available data to further support product design, further develop circular business models, and so forth.
Lisa, do you agree with Peter and Abderrahman? Any other remarks that you want to add for the steps to bring this to life?
I absolutely agree. I just like to stress really that the operators should be aware of their function, of their responsibilities. So I think it's often misunderstood who is really responsible for the battery passport. It's not about being responsible for the battery itself. It's about being responsible for the battery passport. And it's really the one who places the battery on the market. It's not the producer of the battery. And then again, when the battery enters second life, it was also mentioned before. So if the battery is prepared for reuse, repurposing, remanufacturing, it gets a new battery passport. It is placed on the market again. So the one who then places it on the market is then responsible for the data. So you really should know if you are one of these actors who has to provide the data. And another thing, and I think it's a huge problem, it was mentioned before by Peter, are the ongoing processes for the determination of the methodologies. It's not only going on in delegated acts, implementing acts, also standardization processes have started. And he said already the standards are supposed to be there end of 2025, but that's so ambitious. I don't even say it's unrealistic. So companies right now, they don't really know what to expect. They don't have the methodologies. They don't have the clear definitions that are then given or provided by standards and by these delegated acts. However, concerning the technical implementation, the standards are not supposed to provide the one solution. It's not about saying, okay, this solution is good or this solution is in line with the regulation. It's about making sure that different solutions are interoperable. So meaning that you can start right now, but you should make sure that that you follow these processes. But these standards are only meant to be huge help, because if you then use these standards, you make sure that you fulfill the requirements by the regulation. They are not a must, but they are a huge help.
Super. So if I can resume summarize what we discussed today, like in this question. So we need to make sure that the actors are aware of their responsibility in the value chain. We need to have the foundational clear and set and ready, which is access to data, right? And I really like Dr. Lisa's last remark of understanding the standardization, how does it work, and how does it apply for you as an actor. So we have more time for more questions from my end before we move to the interactive bit of today's panel. And I want to start with you, Peter. What do you think lies beyond the battery passport? What is the long-term outlook for this?
What lies beyond? Yeah, I think then I have to come back to what I just mentioned. So at the moment, battery regulation, battery pass is pretty much a reactive exercise. So you have your physical value chain, you document the performance, and then eventually you generate a report. What lies beyond it, I think, as soon as data is available, and maybe don't have to wait for the passport to become available yet to start doing that, is to create data markets to share sustainability performance of products, carbon footprint, supply chain due diligence, recycled content, any kind of data that could help product developers to make informed decisions about which kind of raw materials, ingredients they introduce into the supply chain and what the effect is on the overall sustainability performance of the product that they're designing.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Data market that you propose. What do you think about this, Abdel Rahman?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I would say in general, we need also to start exploring a layer above the kind of information that will be in a DPP. So we have to think about a convergence between the different work that's been done in other sectors as well. So you have terms as a digital twin, terms as an asset administration cell, the data spaces. All of that can play a role in this data economy, this data market, building on the interaction of stakeholders and providing really curated information. So information that will be machine readable for the recycler. So if it's coming from a clean source, so a reman is sending some cells to a recycler, more information can be supported other than just the, let's say, the basic ones. So this is one thing to think about. Another very important thing in the long term, where we should think about the general education and skills of the operators working with these batteries, because you have now stocks of information coming with a battery, and it should, of course, as you mentioned also in your report, it should make the day-to-day operations, the processes that are, a lot of it is still manual, and we can expect it to remain manual for a while. It can be, we should think about how to upskill the operators that are currently experienced with these operations, but with the use of the digital tools, with the use of the supplementary information that can be given with the battery pass.
Okay. And Dr. Lisa, what do you think lies beyond?
Getting away a bit from this technical layer, I think, well, like more products will finally get product passports. And right now we start with the batteries, and I think it will be very interesting to see what happens when like products like a bicycle, an e-bike, or the automotive industry has to provide passports for their cars. I think the real benefits of the passports might unlock then when you can really provide kind of a user story, when you can show, okay, this car has this history, has this this manufacturing processes that lay behind these performances. I think it's difficult to show these benefits if you only focus on batteries, because as a consumer you might buy a car, but probably you don't buy the battery itself. So I think yeah, it will be very interesting to see how the market expands and what will come when actually these future products that enter the market will get their product passports.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. So very interesting to see these concepts of data market and usage story that we could bring to some other products in the market to give us an idea of like what is the whole life cycle of the products. Thank you very much for answering this question. And now we are almost beginning our interactive panel discussion. So through our LinkedIn page, we asked some of our followers about some questions that they could upvote. And one of the questions from that our followers on LinkedIn that they want to understand and are eager to know is which companies offer battery pass solutions or are currently developing them. So it's an open question. So like either Peter, Dr. Lisa, or Abderrahman, you can go for it and help us with this question.
Yeah, I can probably answer that question, but the risk is the list is long, and if I mention a few, then I'm doing advertisement for a few platforms and forgetting to mention others. So I think that's a bit that's a bit tricky. I think there, if you want to see, I would recommend going to the looking at the efforts taking place in the Global Battery Alliance. There's a number of pilots taking place, a lot of different players testing out their platform. So I would recommend going there. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to mention any names here. That wouldn't be fair.
Yes, of course, of course. And what do you think is the incentive and business case for these companies?
Sorry, the business case or incentive?
Yeah,
for
what is the incentive and the business case for these companies that offer the solutions for battery pass?
Obviously to make money. that's why I think I would say that the main incentive. So if you don't make money, you don't survive. That doesn't mean that these companies are not out there for more idealistic reasons. So some of these companies are founded for a lot of because of their nice idealistic reasons for making a better world, a more sustainable world. That's the case. But bottom line is, if they don't make money, they won't survive. In the battery, so the Global Battery Alliance, the pilots that are taking place there's a lot of platforms, some a bit larger, some and more well known, others a bit less well known, I'd say. They're just there at the moment to test out how this all should work. Because well, without saying any names, I think what I can conclude based on what I've seen so far is there's no such thing as a platform that can do everything and that already knows it, because the passport is being developed as we speak. What's important is that they gain the experience, and a lot of them are doing that. Where do you gain the experience? That's in discussions like these. So with the battery pass, other things like Global Battery Alliance, other kind of industry associations, to gain an understanding of what are the regulatory requirements, to what does it mean to meet those requirements, what does a system need to be able to do. And also, that's part, I think, important there, is that it helps to educate not just the battery pass or track and trace solution providers, but also helps educate the industry, more specifically the cell makers and the OEMs, who in the end will have to issue the passport, to point out what their responsibilities are. And I'd say that for me, from my point of view, has been the biggest challenge, making sure that those players in the chain understand what is heading their way, and yeah, creating that sense of urgency to start moving.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Is there any additional remark that Dr. Lisa or Abderrahman wants to do to this?
Not really. Actually, I thought that perhaps there's a service provider within the public who wants to to answer in the chat, but no, from my side, no further remarks.
I would just add, so I would also avoid mentioning any specific initiative or solution, but I would just say that in Surpass, there is a data set of DPP related initiatives. It's open to public. I think it was last updated in March because Surpass ended by then. I think it contains over 200 initiatives, so it's self-reported. It's open, and they, of course, report according to specific questions that we asked, what kind of solution do they offer. So I think it's over 200 initiatives, something like that. Not all of it is battery related. They also cover textile and other electronics and other sectors. But for those interested, this can be a good starting point to see what's on the market. And when it comes, of course, to what can be the benefit, it really depends what kind of initiative are they. Because if it's a track and trace, okay, there are different solutions that can offer that, but a lot of these initiatives also do their own, let's say, analytics on the data and interact with the different companies inside their little ecosystems. So I would just leave it there, and probably in the follow-up project of Surpass 2, there will be more updates regarding this collection of initiatives.
Very good, Abderrahman. Yes, and through the chat, I've seen that some people are sharing the Surpass link so they can check what's on the market. So it's very helpful because a lot of people had this question and wanted to know like how and who does she go to start working on the battery pack solutions. So we're going to move on to the interactive, and we have 49 questions from the audience. Of course, we're not going to be able to go to all of them, but we have some questions that are upvoted and are very popular to get your insights on it. So I'm going to start with the first one that I think that is very interesting to understand who is financially responsible for the creation of a battery passport, and their accessibility, their updating over the entire lifetime of the battery. Like, how do we know and target the responsible for this creation? Up to the three of you, whoever feels comfortable.
Well, I think we talked a lot about this. The one who places the battery on the market doesn't only have to provide the data, but also has to provide the money to do so. He's the one who is actually responsible that the data is accurate, complete, and I think up to date. Yeah. And I mean, many smaller and medium-sized companies asked already how can we do so. I think the Commission has planned to initiate support action in 2026, which seems a bit late, knowing that the battery passport will come to life February 2027. But there are support actions planned.
Okay, good. So very clear. The responsible for putting the battery on the market is responsible for this economic, financially responsible for the creation of the battery passport. Super good. And now we're going to move on to another question from the audience that I find very interesting as well. Like, how is the confidentiality of the information gathered in the passport going to be treated? Like, who's going to have the insights into the information and make sure that follows all the standards about information disclosure and all that. What do you think, Abdel and Peter and Dr. Lisa?
Do you want? It's a very short answer, actually. I mean,
Please.
okay, go ahead. There are three layers actually of information access. Some information will be accessible only to the EU Commission and market authorities. Another information layer or another part of the data is only accessible to persons with a legitimate interest. This has to specify it further in upcoming delegated acts. And then there is the third access group, which is the public. At the same time, I mean, you also get always the question, okay, how can we make sure that all this is secure? There are standards coming up planned for end 2025, to actually guarantee the data security.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Lisa. Peter or Abderrahman, do you have any additional remark on this, or is clear enough? What do you think?
Yeah, so on the data confidentiality, I raised the point before about what does transparency mean? So how transparent should we actually be, and which kind of data do we show? You mentioned already that okay, some is for some data or is visible to the authorities, so they can see most. Some maybe for people who have a real interest in seeing it, and that needs to be defined. Risk that I see there in discussion that we currently have, since it's not defined yet, is how do you define that? And before you know it, you end up with a list that is more than a page long, and contains people who think, well, why the hell should they actually see this information? And it smells more like industrial intelligence rather than actual sustainability supporting work. So I think there's still quite some work to be done, but I think it's going to be very interesting topic to look into in the coming in the coming years.
Thank you, Peter.
If I can,
yes.
Yeah, if I can just add one note regarding this. So I absolutely agree. Of course, these are the different access level and the kind of expected interactions in a DPP. I would just say that the kind of access that will be available to persons of interest for a legitimate reason, of course, it's not really well defined yet. We can expect that, let's say, a repair shop will have access to more information, remanufacturer, and so forth. But a question I have, and this is just a general question, is will that be sector specific? So if I am a recycler of batteries, that means I have access to these kinds of information, or if I'm a recycler in general, I will have access to this information. So that I think we need more input from the industry to give us this this path. So what is possible to enable more cross-sectoral applications, to enable more ecosystem building from other sectors as well, and what can be more sensitive and can be maybe used maliciously. So this I think should be a pull from the industry, not really a push from legislation, in my opinion.
Super. Thank you very much to the two of you for answering this question. And I just want to remind the audience that we have the Slido Q&A here on Zoom, and you can upvote the questions that you think are most relevant for us to ask in this panel. So moving on to the next question that has most votes is, how can battery pass can be integrated into existing platforms like Catena X, for instance? Any one of you that will be up to answer this question?
Well, I would offer my also 2 cents on that. So it can be, of course, there is no particular system that is proposed for a DPP in general that would go against the Catena X or Gaia X or these initiatives. I would say the point that we need to take care about is the type of identification that will be used in the batteries. So are we, because in the direction of Catena X, they are more thinking of the DIDs, the centralized identifiers. And this, of course, gives us some, that might be too technical, but that gives some, let's say, security to the kind of credentials are being issued, and it has its own, let's say, system. But on the other side, so this is more, I say, midterm, long-term, a natural progression of a DPP. But when it comes to also trying to implement it right here, right now, 2027, and we go for it, it's more realistic to recycle the sort of identifiers already present in batteries and the systems already sort of accepted by the industry. So they go, of course, parallel. The sort of advancement being done in this area, as well as the kind of information that will be held in a DPP system.
Thank you, Abdel. Aman. Dr. Lisa, Peter, do you have any notes on this question? Or should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think there are many solutions actually provided by different stakeholders. It's just important to make sure that these solutions that are provided in the end are interoperable. But I think Catena X, there are many people in there in this initiative that are also engaged in standardization. So I think these solutions will be interoperable with other solutions in the end, and which one you choose, it's up to you.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. I'll move to the next question that we have in line here, and that I find very interesting is how to deal with lacking data. Like, what is the common source for secondary data to bridge this gap? Do you think that there's a way to deal with that?
So it's a pretty general question.
Yeah, no, I could probably answer a bit there. If you look at the battery relation and delegated acts, there are requirements there on up to what level do you need to get primary data, and as of which level secondary data is an acceptable alternative. What you see is the further you go up in the supply chain, the harder it is to actually get proper primary data. Industry, like most of us, is really getting ready to do proper carbon footprint calculations, to do the full supply chain due diligence work, recycled content, a lot of new concepts. Just look at the job market, how many job openings there are for LCA specialists. Just to do a quick scan on LinkedIn. You see that industry is looking for those kind of specialists to help them out. So I think it also indicates that there's still a lot of work, to be done. How do you fill in the gaps if you don't have the primary data? There are recognized databases out there containing some data, specifically talking about carbon footprint. Could go for EcoInvent or other kinds of LCA, official LCA databases. Otherwise you also have, for example, carbon footprint data published by industry associations, for example, for certain metals or other kinds of commodity products. I think the data is there one way or another. The more you go for the secondary data, in the end, let's say, the less reliable it is, because what you will see is that behind a lot of companies that do not have the data yet, or maybe expect that they do not, they cannot beat the average data that's being mentioned in this secondary data resource. They will hide behind that data as long as they can, as long as it's not mandatory, because otherwise it will damage them. So yeah, that's my 2 cents here.
Thank you, Peter. I know that is very general, but people are eager to understand how they can access these data, or where are the places to find them in regards to the battery passport. And moving on to our next question that we have most upvotes here is what is the importance for battery passports to meet the standards currently being developed for general product passports? Example in Senelec, for instance.
Yeah, I think they're, yeah, sorry, jumping straight away. I think there, yeah, the situation that we're currently in with the battery pass is the battery industry's version of digital product passport. The standard that is being developed is for the digital product passport. So the situation that we're currently in, so in battery industry, but also, for example, in textiles, is that we're trying to fly the plane and build it at the same time. So at a certain point, those standards will come. Hopefully, it will not hurt us too much in terms of retrofitting what the work we've done so far. But that's the reality we live in today. So eventually, the battery pass will have to follow the standards that are defined for the product passport.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Dr. Lisa, you had some remarks.
No, yeah, I totally agree. Just for the general understanding, I think it's very important to understand that on the one hand, we have this technical implementation that is defined in the standards coming up, end of next year perhaps. And on the other hand, we also have standards that are currently developed in other Senelec working groups related to batteries, concerning the performance, the methodologies, and so on. But concerning the technical setup and the standards that are developed with respect to this, I think Peter already said everything. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. Good. There's another question that seems to need more clarity from our audience. So the initial seller, or the one who places the battery in the market, is the responsible, right? But is it also responsible for the refurbished batteries and for the and upcycling phase? Dr. Lisa, you seem to have the answer right on.
Actually, well, it's a bit difficult because, like, for example, repair, there's no battery status repaired. The battery is either original, or it might be prepared then for repurpose, remanufacturing, reuse. In this case, in the last 3 cases, the responsibility goes over to the next person, to the next operator. But there's still, some, let's say, gray shades, some situations that are not specifically described in the regulation, as I said, like repair actions, for example. In these cases, the responsibility remains with the initial seller of the battery or the initial operator.
Thank you, Dr.
I would just add one thing. It's related to the clause, I think, on the extended producer responsibility regarding, of course, the original operator placing the product in the market, and then you would have the life cycle of the battery, And then, as Dr. Lisa was mentioning, either you prepare for reuse, repurpose, remanufacturing. So in here, the battery regulation actually specify that it should be possible that the economic operators share this burden. So you would have this EPR, extended producer responsibility, would move to the actor who is actually preparing for reuse, preparing for repurpose, but the cost of the actual waste management should be agreed upon. Let's say should be based on the attribution of the actual cost. So it's tricky. I will not say it's very clear, but at least it seems to be trying to level the playing ground, to allocate really equal responsibilities to the different actors. Because if I do operations to really extend the lifetime of a battery, then it's not also very egalitarian to ask the original operator that places it on the market to keep on bearing the responsibility as per the EPR schemes. So lots of discussions need to be made also to see how in practice that would apply.
I think a problem is really that some of these actions are not described or defined in the battery regulation. It's really limited to a few operations that are defined, and it's clear what happens when one of these operations takes place. But yeah, there are some operations that are kind of left out.
Thank you, Barry, for answering these questions from our audience. And it seems that we have some concerns about carbon footprint rules and how often should these data is going to be updated on the battery passports. What is your take on that? So what is in your opinion, what is the calculation rules that should be implemented for the carbon footprint of battery passports, and how often should they be updated, or how often is there going to be updated on the battery passport? Tricky question.
Yeah, well, I think concerning the calculation, I don't have the answer, but it's a static data point. So when the battery is ready and sold, there's one fixed number in the battery passport. And as far as I know, this number won't change over the lifetime of this battery. When then the battery is reused, it gets a new battery passport, there's another number in there. But for the time being, for the life cycle of the battery, the first life cycle, it stays the same.
Yeah, I think indeed for the battery itself, once the battery is placed on the market, indeed that data will become static. It's a snapshot of all the history that that occurred. Looking at the carbon footprint calculation or carbon footprint calculation rules, the battery regulation does not specify the carbon footprint calculation rules. That's done in the delegated act. So it's secondary legislation to support the battery regulation. That one was published by the Commission, or the draft was published by the Commission a bit more than a month ago. The have your say period has closed on the 28th of May, and it's now up to the European Parliament to approve or reject that proposal. So the calculation rules there are specified in that regulation. Now, when it comes to the actual question about is the data static or not, if you are manufacturing the materials that go into the battery, what you will see is that at some points in time you will start creating efficiencies in your operations, so having less energy intense operations. The carbon content of the energy that you consume may go down. So depending on the grid mix or PPAs or any other kinds of factors, and that in its turn will result in a need to update the carbon footprint. So every time you provide data on a batch that you supply, ideally, if there is a significant change in the performance, I would say it's recommended that you that you make an update of that. Yeah. So what I can imagine there is that, well, at least for what I've planned so far myself, is that we at least do an evaluation first time on an annual basis, just to see what the effects are on our own production. But as we gain more experience, as we get more tools in our hands to more closely monitor, for example, carbon footprint performance of our products, so through tracking of our own operations, that frequency may go up. That's but not for I would say not for the first 2 years at least.
Thank you, Peter. That clears the air on the of what we can know so far about the carbon footprint calculations and how if it's a static or dynamic number on the battery passport. So it seems that there's still a confusion among our audience and in the definition of who places the battery on the market, right? So there's still a little bit of confusion on that. I don't know who can take the lead and clear the air for that.
Yeah, I can probably say something. What's in it for the economic operator placing the battery on the market? Compliance, simple compliance. If you do not comply, you can't sell. So that's the bottom line. So that's who pays for it in the end. Like with all these kinds of industry or value chain spanning regulations, in the end, who pays for it? That's the consumer. Looking at the question that Lisa answered a bit earlier of who financially pays for it. Up till now, a lot of these track and trace or battery pass solution providers are trying to figure out their business model. In the end, it's the economic operator placing the battery on the market that needs to issue the battery passport. So since there's no interoperability, that platform ideally is the same, because otherwise it's not going to work, obviously. So that's why they're talking to the OEMs in that case. If the OEMs would say, yeah, but we're not going to pick up the full bill here for this platform, what's going to happen? It's going to drive up the cost of the suppliers, and in the end, that's going to increase the price of the product that's being supplied, and in the end, it ends up with the OEM anyway, and with the customer. So, yeah. So
maybe let me add on that, Peter. Fully agree with you, and also to make clear to the audience, I mean, there were recent discussions between systemic and automotive or other passenger vehicle OEMs. And actually, it's an interesting question. So first, I fully agree with Peter, it's compliance. That means you don't have a choice, and it's a binary compliance. So as Peter said, if you don't have it, you can't sell. It's not like fleet emissions where you might kind of pay your way out of it. It's binary. That's very important. And second, some OEMs are still wondering, are they building the battery or assembling the battery themselves, or are they buying it? And as long as they don't know, they are not really sure how to deal with the battery pass. And having seen automotive a bit in the last years, I'm not really sure whether every automotive OEM has already realized how limited time is now basically on the table, right? The clock is ticking. And if you realize or decide too late what you're going to do, then you realize maybe too late that you really have a problem, and then it's another task force mode. So it's a bit like our recommendation would always be, whether you do the battery yourself or not, rather get ready anyhow, because it's binary compliance. And then for me, binary compliance means I have to do it in the way I need to do it, and I have to do it more cost effective than my competitors, then I have an advantage. But of course, at the end, the bill is paid by the customer because it's a level playing field. We all have to do it. If I do it cheaper than Peter does it, I can reap more margin, but we have to do it anyhow. So that would be my view on that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nicholas, for joining us in the panel. And I believe that is a perfect way to close this discussion. Because like it seems that among the audience is still not clear the benefits or incentives for creating the batteries pass for economic operators. So is it only compliance, or do you think that there's any other incentives that these economic operators have to implement the battery passports? And then we can conclude the discussion. To any of you?
Yeah, I think like the battery passport makes the data more transparent and more comparable. So if your battery performs better or has a better carbon footprint, of course you can promote it via the battery passport.
Mm.
So it can be used as kind of a promotion tool.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa.
And I mean, at the same time, it provides kind of a, let's call it service hotline to the end consumer. So the consumer directly knows where to go. There's one single point of access. You know, okay, I find all the information in here. If I need spare parts, I just go there. And I think that's also for the economic operator who otherwise might get complaints or questions. He can just say, okay, please go to the battery passport. You find everything there.
Very straightforward. Thank you, Dr. Lisa. And with this, I want to yes.
Maybe that I mean, I agree what Lisa just said, but I mean, Peter and me were just saying it's compliance. That means you have to do it. But anyhow, in the battery passport presentations, we also showed that there is still a value opportunity that you can reap out of battery pass, right? So yes, you have to do it. But there are several opportunities where you can make a bit of money out of it. I'm not saying that you're going to reduce the price of the battery by a factor, but in particular, end of life and recycling, there is a point to have that. So it would be a bit awkward to say I just do it for compliance and I let go of the opportunity. So I would highly recommend to also think about that.
Thank you.
And for now, you probably want me and Andreas to close the discussion, right?
Yes, so it's perfect timing. So I want to thank Dr. Lisa Abderrahman and Peter for joining us today in the discussion. It was for their valuable contributions and the insightful discussion. Thank you very much. And then I want to open the final words for today's webinar to Dr. Nicholas, partner at Systemic.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Juan. So first, I want to thank, of course, the panelists. Wonderful that you did this discussion in such an interactive way. But I also want to thank all the participants. I mean, we're now dropping from 175 to 150. I hope that it's not going down in the next 120 seconds to zero. But yeah, many, many thanks for your time. I hope we could answer some of your questions. Many thanks for the discussion. And maybe also taking a step back, I mean, battery passport seems to be rather technical, but what are we trying to do here, right? We're all here together to improve battery and to contribute to sustainability. And in particular, if I look at what happened in the last few days, I mean, Bavaria is drowning, Baden-Württemberg is drowning, and we had 5 fatalities in Germany alone in the last 72 hours. So hopefully we can all agree that climate change is not a political agenda, but we do this because we have to do it. Second, also as on a positive note, I mean, Volvo just recently revealed their new flagship SUV and the battery pass, I think just yesterday, if I got it correctly from Reuters. So we see there's traction, and we believe that now it's really about implementing. So after all the work that the consortium has done in the last more than 12 months, we are really looking forward to drive implementation, battery passports by itself, other digital product passports. And of course, we believe that this should be part of a wider material strategy of players, so recycling, OEMs, and everyone along the value chain. So if you have any questions, we're looking forward for you to reach out to us. And last but not least, I try to also, and on a semi-positive negative note, in only 4 days we have elections. So hopefully the climate change agenda will stay on the agenda, because we believe dropping it is not an option, no matter which color you want to vote for. So looking forward to your questions, and with that, handing over to Andreas.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Niklas, for these closing words. And also thanks again to the audience for joining in the peak. We had more than 200 participants. I also want to mention again, since I saw this now a couple of times in the chat, but also on Slido. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to deep dive on that. But there were several questions also regarding the cost situation for implementing these battery passports. And as I mentioned before, so in the current value assessment, we were still working on several topics, and there will be an update in September where we also have a look at implementation efforts. So how hard is it to implement it? What efforts are required? And this will be coming up in September this year. And until then, of course, I invite you to follow us on LinkedIn, sign up also for our newsletter, and of course, feel free to contact us directly, the Battery Pass Consortium, Niklas Niemann, especially also for questions regarding implementation of battery passports. And thanks again for joining. Have a great day. It was a pleasure. Thanks to the panelists. Thanks to the speakers. And stay tuned, and then hopefully see you soon.